Hello, my name is Owen, and welcome to my review of Robin Hobb's Ship of Destiny. This is the third book in the Live Ship Traders trilogy, and the second trilogy in the Realm of the Elderlings world that Hobb has created. This is a lot of people's favorite trilogy in this Realm of the Elderlings world. People love this trilogy, and having finished it, I know exactly why. I'm going to be comparing it to Farseer a little bit because I think I'm discovering that Rob has a specific trilogy style, or maybe it's like a series style of how she unfolds her stories and her character arcs. And I think it's a fascinating thing because I think not a lot of authors write trilogies this way, and it's a very specific way. And then also I kind of want to compare them a little bit, see which one stacks up, because apparently a lot of people don't like Farseer. It's not really a lot of people's favorite, but which one do I like better? I don't know. Maybe this will unfold as we're discussing about it. And in terms of the things that I liked, in terms of things I didn't like about this trilogy, let's just start with the negatives, just get them out of the way because I have obviously way more positives than negatives. Robin Hobb is, I think, one of the finest authors that I've ever read. Her characters are bar none, some of the best, some of the most nuanced, some of the most amazing. We're going to get into that more specifically later. The negatives. For those of you that watched my Mad Ship review, book 2, I wasn't that positive on it. Obviously, it's a great book, it's great writing, but I thought that not enough had progressed from the end of book 1 to the end of book 2, and I kind of felt like it was maybe meandering a little bit, and it was leaving too much to be set up in this final book in terms of the mystery of what's going on with the serpents and the characters, and how much buildup we still had to get to get a satisfying conclusion. Because one thing Robin Hobb is not afraid to do, and in Farseer it was this conflict of the Red Ship Raiders, right? This big threat. It's gonna end the kingdom, destroy the kingdom. Introduced very early on in book 1, and the whole series are waiting. Okay, now you're gonna have to deal with it because it's pressing. Now you're gonna have to, book 2, you're gonna have to deal with it. Book 3, you're gonna have to deal with it. Come on, it's halfway through the book. You haven't dealt with it yet, and it gets resolved by the end of the book. It's like that, but instead of a big plot, world-ending event, it's character confrontations. It's Althea finally reuniting with Vivacia. It's Kennet and Althea. It's Rain and Malta finally getting together safely and looking each other in the face. It's all these small character interactions, and Wintrow beating Althea, and Paragon finally getting to see. That was the whole thing from the beginning to the end of book 2. It's just smaller character moments and character interactions that take so long to be built up, because obviously with Althea losing her ship in the very early on in book 1, there's going to be a moment where she gets back to the ship, and Robin Hobb takes her good old sweet time getting to that moment. But that being said, because we're building up to these character moments and book 2 didn't take us very close to getting there, book 3 has to do a lot of legwork. And this is not the longest book I've ever read by any means. It's just under 800 pages. But a lot of this book is setting the groundwork for the final fourth of the book, maybe the final third of the book, if you want to be I don't exactly know where it started going down. But the first half focuses a lot on Bingtown. It first focuses a lot on the Cirilla and her power arc and her power struggle, which I thought was interesting, and I did like her character arc and how Ronica just, took her power back and stuff like that. However, it's interspersed with these slow journeys of a lot of characters, and this is something that people hated about the final book in Farseer, is that it's Fitz going on a really long journey. People were bored by it. They wanted to get more action instead of these slow meandering journeys. And I feel like it worked less, in my opinion, in this book than it did in Farseer, because almost every single character was on a long journey. Althea and Brashen were on Paragon, and they were going on a journey to try to find the pirates. And Malta was on a journey with just trying to escape, and then she's captured, and then she's on a journey. Then Rain's on a journey with the dragon to try to get after her. Then everyone's on a journey. So it's just switching POVs of different people not very close to their goal, interspersed with this Bingtown politics drama, which I feel like was very, very interesting. And it kind of almost felt like, and I feel like this is a smart thing to do, because if it was just the journeys, it would have been really boring. But it just kind of felt like this was a placeholder story until Hobb could write enough of these journeys that they kind of finally pay off. But basically what this made me feel was like, in the first book, and I would say even the second book, I don't think that this series had the issue of multiple POVs where one POV is extraordinarily more interesting than the other, which is, I feel like, is a complaint with a lot of multi-POV stories, is where it's like you're in the midst of action for one and then you switch to the one that's really boring and everybody hates. It's the most frustrating thing ever. I felt the twinge of that annoyance in this book when I hadn't felt that in the entire series, because the only place where things were really happening was with Bingtown and was with Ronica in the beginning, or then kind of switched to Rain was the one because he was dealing with the dragon more and stuff like that. But the politics of Bingtown was the only thing where like action was happening and decisions were being made, conclusions were being reached in the first half of the book, which just made it more frustrating when it'd be like cliffhanger moment. Oh, we're back to the ship. Oh, the tension between Brashen and Althea. Oh, are they going to kiss? Are they going to not? And not that any of those POVs are bad, and obviously I love those characters, but it's just like the tension in the first half is unbalanced, and it kind of leads for an uneven reading experience, in my opinion. That being said, and I kind of already said this, but the reason why I think Hobb did this is because she kind of had to stall the suspense for this last third, because the last third of this book makes it all worth it. And you know what? Shame on me for even being down on this book at all when I was reading it. Because like even a week ago when I still had like 300 pages left, I'm like, well, it's fine, it's good. Like I like the series, but it's like not one of my favorites. The final third of this book makes everything worth it. All the character interactions, all the buildup, all the growth that we've experienced for 2.5 books at this point, it's for a specific reason. And if there's one thing I learned from finishing this series is that you can never doubt Robin Hobb. She knows exactly what she is doing. And this book is extraordinarily dark. This is like probably the darkest Robin Hobb, like had some of the darkest Robin Hobb moments that I've ever read by far. And Fitz went through the ringer, let me tell you. This goes through and Beware. It goes through very detailed or very visceral, rather, maybe not detailed, very visceral accounts of sexual assault in this book. And they hinted at it. They had moments with Cirilla in the second book that were very visceral as well. But this book tackles it in a way that is very visceral. It's very anxiety-inducing. It's very, like, it just fills you with dread. And I feel like there are very, 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 very few authors that could have handled this situation and this writing topic as well as Hobb did, because I don't want to spoil it right now. I'm going to be spoiling it later, but the characters involved, it just makes you want to vomit. It really does, and I think Hobb handles it obviously very tastefully. It's very well done, and I think the message that Hobb is trying to send with this book is extraordinarily powerful, and it makes almost like the fantasy, the adventure of it almost redundant, because the characters and the message she's trying to tell with these characters almost ascend beyond it. And I think the conclusion, I could see where people could be dissatisfied with the conclusion of this book, because Robin Hobb is not afraid to tell a more realistic story, where not everyone gets their satisfying conclusions. Not the good guys don't always stand on the throne, and the bad guys are sent to hell, right? It's just not that kind of world. But I do like that Robin Hobb doesn't delve, at least in my opinion, into grimdark fantasy, where if you're reading like a Joe Abercrombie book, bad things happen to people, and Joe will say, and it does. And you know what? Sometimes they die alone and afraid. Good people die. And you know what? That's just the way of the world. Robin Hobb will say, yeah, I agree with that, but I'm not going to leave you crying in the corner when you read the last page. She saves that for the first 90%. And then the last 10 should be like, but there's still hope in the world. It's still more, at least in my opinion, a more positive, optimistic outlook on life. But this book really deals with so much deeper themes. I feel like the other ones, like the cycle of abuse and how that affects characters and the dark side of memories, because this trilogy is about like these dragons, the ships, they're powered by memories, and the serpents need the memories. And this book kind of takes that concept and explores like the darker side of it. Like maybe more traumatic memories. Like, what does that do to someone if they have them, or what do they do if they separate themselves from them? How does that affect you as a person? And how does that let you rationalize like your past, that your traumatic past, and what do you do to the people around you as you kind of grow into those memories? And I don't know. There was moments in this book, and you know what? I'm just gonna go into spoilers from now on. I can't keep beating around the bush, okay? If you haven't read this book yet, I'm assuming you read the first two, or why are you here? You will not be disappointed with this conclusion. I'm just gonna say that. But in terms of spoilers, I just want to talk about Althea in this book. Because obviously what Kennit does to her in this book is absolutely disgusting. And I guess we're going to veer off into Kennit real fast, because he is one of the most complicated characters from the very beginning. And I said this in the very first review, because I felt like he was a character who always did, in the first two books, he always did the right thing on paper for the worst reasons. Even from the first book, when he was capturing the slave ships and he was freeing the slaves, he was doing it to fuel his own image and fuel his own ego. Even though he's like, his first mate was like, I just really want to free slaves. Like, I'm just a good guy. He's like, yeah, we'll do that, but how can this advance my power? But he slowly traps our characters that we know are good under his web, and with Wintrow and even Edda, who we kind of learn to respect and grow to love, as we see her in this toxic relationship with Kennit. They care so deeply about him that we look past his flaws and his ego, because like, if Wintrow cares so heavily about him, well, we got to support Wintrow. Maybe Kennit can do something good after all. Maybe he can be king of the pirates and make this world a better place, and we could just push aside his ego. Yeah, he's got a big ego, so what? And I think it's a masterclass of Robin Hobb, that she's able to take this feeling that, looking back, I know that I had, and pervert it into a way where you can forgive so much atrocities that Kennit has done. You can forgive his attitude, you can forgive his ego. Can you forgive this? And then it's the scene with him and Althea. And obviously we can't abide by it, and it makes you feel sick. But then we watch as like Wintrow struggles with it, Edda struggles with it, the crew struggles with it, and even Vivacia struggles with it. Even addressing this fact of this assault that Kennit has done to Althea. And the small-brained amongst you will say, oh, well, Wintrow, he's a bad guy now. What the hell? Like, why would you like not like instantly like kill him, or, you know what I mean? It's such a complicated scenario. You know exactly why everyone just doesn't grow up like roar and go to Althea's side. And this intense loyalty, this pushing aside of all the negative things, causes like Althea instantly to be like, I can't, like, why is nobody freaking out as much as I'm freaking out? Like, am I in the wrong? Which is so like realistic, unfortunately. And I feel like, especially reading it as someone who hasn't gone through anything like that, it's such an effective way at giving you a specific emotion that you would never have access to. Because it's rage and it's confusion. And it's just gaslighting to the extreme. And it's just extraordinarily powerful. And not even... And I think for the rest of the book, like, Althea is perfectly written in terms of this trauma that she carries. Not just when she has anger at Kennit, but even after Kennit is defeated in an unclimactic way, by the way, which I feel like a lot of people might have issue with. And I was kind of disappointed. I'm like, where's this confrontation? Where's this comeuppance? Not every confrontation in the real world is a satisfying end. It's up to us as individual humans to give ourselves the satisfying closure that we need to move on with our lives and break this cycle of violence and trauma and abuse. So I really love that Hobb didn't give us that moment. As unsatisfying as it was as a reader, that Althea with obviously help from Paragon, had to overcome this moment inside herself. It's just, it couldn't have ended any other way to be true, I feel like. But this reveal of Kennit's backstory and this trauma that he felt, because we were kind of drip fed his backstory throughout the entire trilogy, and it was very, very vague. Same thing with the serpents as well, is that I've noticed as a reader, when I'm given very little information, when I'm given very vague drips throughout an entire series, I'm not someone who engages with the mystery of it. If anything, I will take the information you're giving me and just kind of push it off to the side and focus on what I know is tangible. And which is a thing I said about Mad Ship, right? Where this mystery of the serpents and how they transform into cocoons and dragons, stuff like that, it's all kept very unclear until like this book, where it's kind of just like, okay, it's very easy to understand. But because of that, like the POV chapters of serpents, I kind of just like, okay, I don't understand what you're doing and why I care about you, so I'm just not going to care. And that's like a reading flaw of mine. And same thing with Kennit's backstory. He would mention Ygritte, the pirate. He would mention where he came from. He mentions like his little house and his mom, and she has no tongue. I'm like, okay, if you're not going to explain it, then I'm not going to ask. Is kind of how I felt about it. So like the reveal of Kennit being a Ludluck and Paragon's connection to him didn't like shake me to my core, right? Because I just wasn't really engaged in his backstory. I wasn't even thinking that Paragon had a secret backstory or like a plot twist to happen. I think it was a good development, but like I wasn't like knocked off my socks. But what is interesting to me about this dynamic of Paragon and Kennit is that obviously Kennit was horribly abused and literally killed multiple times and brought back to life by Paragon when he was on there. What I found interesting was that this Paragon was holding his trauma in a way, and it's kind of very vague, magic-y. Oh, I took it away. What does that even mean? You took it away. What do you mean? And to me, it's like, obviously we don't need magic in the real world to have cycles of abuse and people as kids getting trauma dealt to them, and then when they grow up doing the same thing to their kids. We don't need magic in the real world for people to do that. But it's kind of like a magic-y way, not to explain it, but it's like Kennit gave away almost obviously the emotional trauma that it did to him. He kind of gave away his emotional connection to the actual events. So now he just remembers it, and he kind of is like detached from that, which I feel like allows him to commit these acts, these heinous acts, almost without care. He almost like justifies it in the fact that it was done to him, which is something that's very common in this cycle of abuse. So in this, the way it's presented, it's this Kennit is such a tragic character. But you cannot justify what he does. He is a villain, don't get me wrong. And I think that that's a line in media that people, or writers, I guess, and storytellers have a trouble finding the right balance, right? You want to have a villain who you sympathize, or maybe not sympathize with, but that you understand. You understand where they came from without empathizing and supporting them. Or without sympathizing and supporting them. You want empathy, not sympathy, right? So I just think it was fascinating, and the way that like Kennit was like absorbed into Paragon, and he got Edda pregnant and lives on through the child, and Wintrow is still the king, or helps like the interim king of the pirates. Kennit still lives on at the end of this book, and in a just world, he would just be erased from existence, and everyone would realize how such a bad guy he was, and he just erased. But he continues to live on in a very, very tangible way. He almost enters the lore and the legend of this world, which is very unfair. But it's framed in a way that it's almost like the good of Kennit. The thing that everybody loved about him is what's going to be living on, because Paragon kind of purified it. Wintrow is just inherently good, and he is going to raise the child with Edda, and Edda knows the darker sides of Kennit. And there's a very great moment where Edda asks Paragon, "Did he love me?" And Paragon lies and says that Kennit did love her, because he doesn't want the child to grow up with his mom knowing that the child's dad doesn't care about him. And I just think that it's fascinating. And then same thing with with Althea and Kyle. That was a confrontation that we were all itching for in the first book, and then obviously Kenneth, like, whew, he got his ass handed to him real quick. But the confrontation of seeing how far he has fallen, and then Althea promising that Malta and Wintrow just aren't going to know about this. He's going to die a heroic death. Keffrey is not going to know this. It's just these characters. What makes them good isn't that they win the day unscathed. It's that they refuse to do unto others what has been done to them, which makes them good, I feel like. I don't know. I just found it's not philosophical, but it's very thought-provoking, and it's very deep. And honestly, that's the kind of stuff that we come here for, I feel like, in literature. And I think some of the best fantasy works make you think like this. They make you think about uncomfortable things. I just thought it was very powerful. I spoke for about 20 minutes, and I'm running out of things to say now. I just think that it's beautiful, and it's realistic. And you know what? That's life. That's life. I recommend it. I might have to read more Realm of the Elderlings. I don't know if I can put it away. I don't know if I can. It was fantastic. Be sure to like and subscribe if you liked the video, if you want to see more like it in the future. It's the only way to do it. Thanks for sticking around.